The world knew Ace Frehley as Kiss's enigmatic Space Ace, the silver-masked guitar hero who could make a Les Paul scream like no one else. But on March 17, 1978, at Cobo Hall in Detroit, something happened that revealed the man behind the makeup in a way no magazine interview ever could. What started as an aggressive confrontation became one of rock and roll's most profound lessons in dignity, compassion, and the true meaning of strength. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss more untold stories from rock's golden age. It was the height of Kiss's Alive 2 tour, and Ace Frehley was performing at the peak of his powers. His solo album had just been released a month earlier, and New York Groove was climbing the charts faster than anyone had predicted. The sold-out crowd of 18,000 was electric with anticipation. Kiss had transformed from a struggling New York bar band into the biggest rock phenomenon in America, and Ace's smoking guitar solos had become the stuff of legend. The show was following its usual explosive pattern. Gene Simmons had breathed fire during Firehouse. Paul Stanley had soared over the crowd on his flying rig, and Peter Criss had delivered a powerhouse drum solo. Now it was Ace's moment. The stage lights dimmed to deep blue and purple. Dry ice fog rolled across the floor, and a single spotlight hit Ace as he launched into Shock Me. His fingers flew across the fretboard of his custom Gibson Les Paul, the one with the 3 humbucking pickups that gave it that thick, saturated tone that made every note sound like it was coming from outer space itself. The crowd was mesmerized, watching this quiet guitar hero who rarely spoke on stage but could make his instrument say everything that needed saying. Ace had always been the mysterious one in Kiss, the cool, detached Space Ace who seemed to exist in his own dimension. While Gene commanded attention with his demon persona and Paul worked the crowd with theatrical charisma, Ace simply stood there and played, letting the music speak for itself. That's exactly what 28-year-old Danny Wrench Morrison thought as he stood in the floor section, drunk on a volatile mixture of Jack Daniels, beer, and resentment. Wrench worked at a transmission shop in Dearborn, and he'd bought his ticket to the Kiss show not because he was a fan, but because his girlfriend had left him for a guy who looked like Paul Stanley. In his alcohol-clouded mind, Ace Frehley represented everything he hated about rock stars. The fame, the money, the adoration, the ability to hide behind makeup and mystery, while regular guys like him struggled through life with no one paying attention. As Ace moved into the guitar solo, bending notes and coaxing feedback from his Marshall amps in ways that seemed to defy physics, Wrench's anger reached its boiling point. He'd been getting progressively louder throughout the show, and now, emboldened by alcohol and frustration, he decided to make himself impossible to ignore. "Frehley, you ain't nothing but a pretty boy hiding behind that makeup." Wrench's voice cut through the arena during a brief pause. "Take off that mask and face the real world like a real man." The challenge hung in the air like smoke from Ace's guitar effects. The crowd around Wrench turned to stare, some with anger, others with shock. Security guards started moving toward his section. Paul Stanley looked over at Ace to see how he would react, and Ace himself stopped playing. The sudden silence was startling. The band, confused, gradually let their instruments fall quiet. 18,000 people held their collective breath. In all the years of Kiss shows, Ace Frehley had never simply stopped playing in the middle of a solo. It was like watching a magic trick interrupted at its crucial moment. What nobody in that arena knew was that Wrench's words had hit Ace in a particularly vulnerable place. Just 3 weeks earlier, Ace had been in a recording studio in Manhattan, and he'd caught his reflection in the control room glass. For a moment, he hadn't recognized himself. The face looking back was Paul Daniel Frehley from the Bronx, a kid who'd grown up fixing cars and playing guitar in his bedroom. But somewhere along the way, that kid had disappeared behind silver paint and cosmic mythology. The crowd was getting restless. Some were booing Wrench. Others were chanting, "Space Ace, Space Ace." Security was now just rows away from the heckler. But then Ace did something that surprised everyone who knew him. Instead of ignoring the disruption, he walked to the front of the stage. He motioned for security to stop. Then he spoke into his microphone, his voice carrying that distinctive Bronx accent. "You want to see the real man behind this makeup?" Ace said quietly but clearly. "You think I'm hiding from something?" The arena went completely silent. In hundreds of Kiss shows, Ace rarely spoke more than a few words on stage. Hearing him address the crowd directly was unprecedented. Even the other band members looked shocked. Wrench, sensing he'd gotten under Ace's skin, grew bolder. "Yeah, that's right. You're all fake. You're nothing without that makeup and those special effects." Ace stood at the edge of the stage, looking down at this drunk, angry stranger. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he reached up and did something that made 18,000 people gasp. He began removing his makeup. Right there in the middle of the show, Ace Frehley started wiping the silver paint from his face with a towel handed to him by a stunned stagehand. The makeup that took an hour to apply, that was part of Kiss's mystique, came off in thick silver and black streaks. Underneath, revealed piece by piece, was the face of Paul Daniel Frehley, tired, human, and completely vulnerable. "Is this what you wanted to see?" Ace asked, his face now half-painted, half-bare. "Come up here and let's talk about it." Wrench, emboldened by the sudden attention, pushed his way toward the stage. Security, confused by Ace's invitation, let him pass. When Wrench finally climbed up, he found himself face to face with a rock legend who looked nothing like the cosmic character he'd been shouting at. "You wanted to prove something," Ace said steadily. "So what is it?" Wrench stammered. "I'm tired of people like you. You get everything handed to you. What do you know about real struggle?" What Ace did next became one of the most talked about moments in Kiss history. He picked up an acoustic guitar from the wings and handed it to Wrench. "You want to know about struggle? Let me tell you a story." He gestured for Wrench to sit on an equipment case. The crowd, captivated, watched as Ace sat beside this heckler and began to talk. "I grew up in the Bronx," Ace began, his voice carrying through the sound system. "My father worked on the docks. My mother cleaned houses. We didn't have money for guitar lessons. Everything I learned because I practiced until my fingers bled. You know what I was doing when I was your age? Working in a furniture store during the day and playing in bars at night for $20 a show." Wrench sat there, looking increasingly uncomfortable as Ace's words stripped away his assumptions. "You think this makeup is hiding something?" Ace continued, gesturing to his half-cleaned face. "You're right. It's hiding the fact that I'm scared every day that I'm not good enough, that the success will disappear. You think you're the only one who feels invisible? I've felt that way my whole life, even with 18,000 people watching me." The arena was so quiet you could hear individual coughs from the back rows. This vulnerability from a member of Kiss was unprecedented. "The lesson now," Ace said, looking at Wrench directly. "I want you to play something on that guitar. Because real strength isn't being perfect. It's being willing to try something even when you're scared of failing." Wrench looked down at the guitar. I don't know how to play, he admitted quietly. Then I'll teach you, Ace said. He positioned Wrench's fingers on the frets. This is G, now C and D. Those 3 chords. That's all you need for 1,000 songs. Over the next 10 minutes, Ace Frehley patiently taught a drunk heckler basic chord progressions. When Wrench struggled, Ace encouraged him. When his strumming was awkward, Ace showed him how to relax. And when Wrench finally managed to play through a simple progression, Ace had the sound engineer mic the acoustic guitar so everyone could hear. There you go, Ace said with genuine pride. You just played guitar in front of 18,000 people. Wrench looked out at the applauding crowd, and tears started running down his face. I'm sorry, he said, voice cracking. My girlfriend left. I might lose my job, and I just wanted someone to notice I exist. Ace put his hand on Wrench's shoulder. Brother, we all want that. Every person in this arena. That's what music is for. Connecting with each other and remembering we're not alone. Ace stood and addressed the crowd. This man, Danny, came tonight thinking he needed to tear me down to build himself up. But what he really needed was for someone to see him. And he does matter. We all do. He turned back to Wrench. Tomorrow morning, come to our hotel. I'm giving you this acoustic guitar and the phone number of a guitar teacher here in Detroit. I'll pay for your first 6 months of lessons. But promise me something. When you learn to play, use that skill to connect with people, not to hide from them. The arena erupted. Wrench, overwhelmed and sobbing, could only nod. Before the show continued, Ace made one more announcement. I need to thank Danny. He reminded me why I started playing music, not to be famous or hide behind makeup. I started playing because it made me feel connected to something bigger. And if I've lost sight of that, that's something I need to fix. He picked up his Les Paul, his face still half clean. Let's do this different tonight. No more hiding. Let's just play. What followed was unlike any Kiss show before or since. Ace left his makeup half removed, and the performance had a raw, honest energy that fans still talk about decades later. His guitar solos that night had an emotional depth that transcended technical skill. Danny Wrench did show up the next morning. Ace gave him the guitar and teacher's information, plus 2 hours of his time talking about life, struggle, and vulnerability. Wrench later said that conversation changed his entire perspective on strength. I thought being strong meant never showing weakness, Wrench told a Detroit newspaper a year later. Ace taught me that real strength is being honest about your struggles and helping others with theirs. Wrench learned to play that guitar and eventually performed in local clubs. He taught free lessons to neighborhood kids, using the same patience Ace had shown him. When he died in 2019, his obituary mentioned that night as one of his life's defining moments. For Ace, the incident marked a turning point. He began speaking more openly about his struggles with fame's pressures and his relationship with the Space Ace persona that had both made and constrained him. That drunk guy did me a favor, Ace said months later. He forced me to confront the fact that I'd been using the makeup as armor instead of art. That's no way to live. The story spread quickly through rock circles, cited as an example of handling conflict with grace. For fans at Cobo Hall that night, it became a touchstone memory. They'd come to see Space Ace, the untouchable guitar hero. Instead, they saw something more powerful. A man courageous enough to reveal his humanity. People remember me for my guitar solos, Ace reflected years later. But if there's one thing I hope people remember, it's that night in Detroit when I stopped hiding and started being real. The strongest thing you can do isn't to prove you're better than someone who challenges you. It's to help them see their own worth. The confrontation reminds us that behind every act of aggression is usually someone who feels invisible. And it shows us that the most powerful response to hostility is understanding and the willingness to see the humanity in everyone. Ace could have had Wrench thrown out, could have ignored him, could have used his position to humiliate him. Instead, he chose to teach him, help him, and show 18,000 people what real strength looks like when it's not hiding behind silver paint. That's why, more than 40 years later, people still talk about the night Ace Frehley removed his makeup and showed his true face. It wasn't just great rock and roll. It was the courage to be authentically, vulnerably human. If this story moved you, subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that real strength comes from helping others. Have you ever had a moment when unexpected kindness changed your perspective? Tell us in the comments below.